you everyone, and welcome to our third webinar in the series in partnership between Innovation Ventures within the Office for Research at Rutgers, New Brunswick Libraries also at Rutgers, and the USPTO, or the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And today's topic is patenting apps and software applications, and we have Alford Kindred, who is the supervisory patent examiner from USPTO, joining us. But before we jump into the presentation, I would like to do a brief presentation of the Office of Innovation Ventures to you. So my name is Tatiana, and I'm the Associate Vice President for Innovation Ventures, and I will tell you a little bit about our process and sort of what we do, who we are, et cetera, and how you can work with us. You may or may not know that offices like ours came about as a result of the Bayh-Dole Act, which was implemented in the 1980. And before the 1980, universities or not-for-profit organizations that would receive federal funding and would invent or create something did not have the right to own the results of the innovation. It went sort of back to the federal government, and the federal government did not always utilize it to the greatest extent for the public benefit. So this arrangement or legislation was put in place to enable universities and other not-for-profit organizations to retain rights to their inventions. But then there were also obligations that and sort of rules of engagement that we have to follow. And the main goal is to support innovation within an academic realm, to have a mechanism to protect and commercialize intellectual property that comes out of federally funded research and otherwise, to facilitate partnerships with other institutions, with industry, all with the goal of public benefit and economic development. So the mission of Innovation Ventures is to partner with the Rutgers community to encourage deliberate innovation, protect and leverage Rutgers intellectual property, foster collaboration with industry, and enable entrepreneurship. This is a snapshot just of a small number of researchers, innovators that we work with, and we're looking forward to adding your picture and your name to our team of colleagues that we work with. I also wanted to share with you some of the innovations that have come out of Rutgers laboratories. Again, small sampling. I'm only going to talk about a couple, but there are so many. We have hundreds of products in the marketplace that have come into the marketplace as a result of this tech transfer in partnership with industry, based on research at Rutgers or innovation at Rutgers. So this particular one is Brinura. It was developed in partnership with a company called BioMarin. David Sleet and Peter Labelle identified the cause of a life-threatening disease in children called Batten's disease, and they discovered that you can replace an enzyme that's deficient and stop the illness from progression. And this resulted in this life-changing enzyme replacement therapy that slows the progression of this illness in children. We also commercialize software, as you will hear, but also content. And this is an example of content that was turned into a certificate program that is essential or important and very helpful for continued medical education, and specifically for nurses, nurse practitioners, physicians, physician assistants. It was licensed to a company called Haymarket in 2011, and this content has generated over $1 million in revenues for the university. Another exciting innovation is this AMH assay, which was developed by David Seifer in partnership with Mass General. And this hormone is an indicator of ovarian reserve and is particularly helpful in identifying good candidates for in vitro fertilization. A more recent example of successful tech transfer has to do with a company called Nemogen, with support from New Jersey Health Foundation, Dr. Mark Syracuse of New Jersey Medical School started a company, a biotech startup that is focusing on identifying and advancing therapies for patients suffering from inflammation and allergies. So now just a little bit about the team, Innovation Ventures. We're subdivided into 4 groups. The intellectual property team does do 2 things. First, it's a team of paralegals that help keep track of all the important communications within the researchers and innovators at Rutgers, but also our partners on the outside, law firms that help us patent or copyright or register a trademark. There's the licensing team, which takes over once the appropriate intellectual property protection is put in place. They do the evaluation of notices of an invention. They do the marketing, business development. They do the agreement negotiation and subsequent alliance management. They also do a lot of innovator mentoring and education as may be helpful. New Ventures team within Innovation Ventures focuses on services for startup companies. So if somebody wants to start a company, doesn't know how to go about it, needs resources, assistance, business plan, etc., that is the team to go to. They also manage commercialization funding that within Rutgers is called Tech Advance and Health Advance. One focuses on life sciences, the other one is everything outside of the life science space. Finance and compliance team manages all of the revenue collection and distribution, contract compliance, and they also do a lot of things in the space of data reporting, analytics, etc. So you're going to hear some of this, but just sort of as it relates to innovations at Rutgers. So intellectual property can be protected by patent, copyright, trademark, or trade secret. We at Rutgers and within Innovation Ventures deal with everything except for trade secrets. We don't have a whole lot of trade secrets because we can't keep secrets very well. Under the Rutgers patent policy, the university holds the rights to intellectual property invented by faculty, students, or staff to the extent that it was invented as within the scope of their employment or using university resources. So the student piece is sort of determined on a case-by-case basis. We pay for patenting costs and fees, we market and negotiate license, and then we distribute licensing revenue, if we ever receive one from successful commercialization, to the inventor personally, to Innovation Ventures to support our operation, and to inventor's school, chancellor, or department unit. This is our process. If you have an idea, the first step to do is to disclose it to our office through our portal, innovatorportal.rutgers.edu. It's an online form. It's pretty straightforward, self-explanatory. One of the licensing managers will do the evaluation of the notice of invention and essentially decide together with you what the next steps are. If we decide to file a patent application, trademark registration, copyright registration, then that's what we do together with our outside attorneys. That we then do the marketing and hopefully license to either an existing company or a startup, and then we do alliance management for the life of the agreement. This is the team. We're subdivided into different technical areas. We have the team that handles life science inventions. We have the team, this is missing agriculture, but this is the team that works on physical sciences, engineering, and agriculture related notices of invention. And this is the team that works on software and creative works innovations. Just a word about the licensing. If we're so lucky, then the types of licenses that we work with is an exclusive, which is a license to a single organization. So a license is the grant of rights to third parties, essentially to develop or commercialize university innovation. Non-exclusive grants rights to multiple organizations. Express license speeds up the licensing process, and it's sort of a click and download in some instances, which is really amenable to software or apps. And then an option is just that, it's an option to negotiate a license, and it's usually granted for a period of time. This is the New Ventures team. They offer all of these services to those interested in starting up a company. Commercialization funding, I talked about. There's Tech Advance, which is up to 75,000, Tech Express, 15,000, and Health Advance to assist the development of early stage life science technologies, and that's usually up to 150,000. We also have a team that works in partnership with other areas within the university to bring to Rutgers community a program called I-Core, which uses experiential education to help researchers gain valuable insight into market needs and challenges, and helps with figuring out the rigor of starting a new business. These are just some of the metrics, just to show that we manage a very large operation. There are a lot of technologies under our management, close to 1,200. Over 40% of the portfolio is currently licensed. We're still looking for and are eager to receive more invention disclosures from our faculty and staff, and we're hoping you can help us with that, especially once you learn more through this program. This is the larger team within the Innovation Ventures, more of the team. Also wanted to do a brief plug-in for the fellowships that we offer, which is a program or a paid opportunity to learn more about a career in intellectual property, technology transfer, new ventures, marketing and business development, alliance management. And I think that's it. So with that, I'm going to transfer it over to Dee Magnoni to introduce the New Brunswick Libraries and the speaker.
Thanks so much, Tatiana. I really enjoyed your slide deck and learned a lot. I am Dee Magnoni. I'm the Associate University Librarian for Rutgers New Brunswick Libraries. And on the New Brunswick campus, we have 7 libraries, as well as special collections and university archives. Today, I'm here to talk about the Library of Science and Medicine, which is where our patent collection is. The Library of Science and Medicine on the Bush campus is one of 83 USPTO Patent and Trademark Resource Centers, PTRCs, in the United States. The PTRC representative in the libraries is an information expert trained on how to use search tools to access patent and trademark information. The human touch that no webpage or legal book can provide can help professors, student inventors, and local inventors find the information they need to protect their intellectual property. Our speaker today is Alford W. Kindred. Alford Kindred has been with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office since 1997. His tenure includes serving as a patent examiner, primary patent examiner, supervisory patent examiner, acting director of the Office of Information Management Services, regional manager of the Midwest Regional Office, and the Outreach Regional Assistant Director for the Elijah J. McCoy Midwest Regional USPTO located in Detroit, Michigan. Mr. Kindred earned his Bachelor of Science in Electronic Engineering at Norfolk State University, and then a master's degree in Computer Resources and Information Systems at Webster University, St. Louis, Missouri. He's a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. Alfred, thank you for your service. Mr. Kindred also founded mentoring programs for kids. He helps them learn about STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and intellectual property through active participation. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Dee. First of all, thank you all for having us, the Patent Office, today. We really appreciate it. And I enjoyed this whole webinar series. But on this particular one is really interesting because we're talking about patenting apps and software. And that's the new and upcoming thing now. And that's the way that these young kids and even us older folks are living now, based on apps, as opposed to just regular, the way that we used to do things. All right, so the topic of discussion today, we're going to talk about IP as a business strategy. We're going to go into what is intellectual property. And we all know intellectual property is patent, trademarks, copyrights, trade secrets. We're going to talk a little bit about filing US applications and also best practices when filing US applications. And last but not least, we're going to talk about the USPTO resources, as well as the resources for innovation ventures and the PTRC. IP-intensive industries are critically important to the US economy. Just think about it, 45 million jobs are in the IP-intensive industries, and it makes up 38% of the gross domestic product. And last but not least, especially when it comes to money and jobs, for people who are in these types of industry, it makes 46% higher pay. And along with what we were just talking about earlier about what innovation ventures do, you know, IP as a strategy, as a business strategy, it's not only attractive to business investors, but it also defers infringements and lawsuits. And when you have an invention, the very first thing you want to do is protect that invention, because that helps your business. That also helps you personally. And you can use that information, or you can use your IP protection or your intellectual property portfolio, if you will, leverage, like if you have a company, if you want to merge with other companies. So it's good to have have your intellectual property protected. And of course, is a property right. So intellectual property is a property right. So of course, it'll help your business, and it is global. Now, I want to make that clear. It's global as far as intellectual property, but we're going to go into this later on. But when you're filing for an patent application in the United States, you get the coverage in the United States, but we'll go into that a little later on. Why invention matters? Well, first of all, the reason why the United States government give protection or give you a monopoly, you know, to use and make and exclude others is to promote innovation. So it matters because we want to promote innovation. We want you to have those the inventions and ideas that you have. We want you to put it out there so people can actually expand on them and actually create more innovation. But it also helps company growth, because inventions and protection of the invention matters, because when you have a company and you're growing, you want to make sure that your assets, your inventions, your ideas, your products, that they're protected. So someone or some entity wouldn't tell you to stop using that invention. And it benefits the community. Inventions are very important, especially now with the way technology is advancing. It benefits the community when you have that idea and you're able to protect that idea and put it out there, especially in the medical fields, when you have all of these new and innovative changes to help people, elderly people or people that are sick. It's good to get that invention out there on the market to help people. And also for personal growth with innovation and invention, it helps you personally, because if you have these certain ideas and you have these certain inventions that you have, there's no better feeling than having that invention out there, helping others, or just getting that invention out there. And then if you then to make sure that you protect that invention, but it definitely helps your personal growth because this is your idea. These are things that you created. What is intellectual property? Well, folks, think of it like this. Intellectual property is like, it's similar to that house on the left side of the screen. You see the house and it has a picket fence around it. That house and that picket fence is the boundaries of the house, is what is how that house is the boundary of the house, right? It's the property of the house. And think of it like this: with intellectual property, instead of a house, it's your intellect. It's your ability to create things, your ideas. And whatever that idea is that has that inventive concept, that's that house. And that picket fence, and with intellectual property, that property is the boundary around that thought or that idea. So intellectual property is similar to that house surrounded by by the picket fence around that boundary. Your intellect or your ideas has to have a boundary around it. And that way, that's what we give you all, or that's what you all do when you file for a patent and you get a claim. That's just the boundaries around that particular idea of how far that idea exists, or how far that idea, how far you can go with that idea and the protection of that idea. So intellectual property is your intellect, Your ideas, your thoughts, your creativity, and property is the boundary around it. And of course, the types of intellectual property are patents, which are new ideas, new and inventive ideas. Trademarks, which is identifies the source of a good. Copyright, and we're going to go into this later on too. Is anything, if you write something down and you finish it on any tangible item, that's copyright. So it's copyright. So a song or poem, something like that, that's a form of copyright. And trade secret is exactly what it is a secret. That means you don't want to tell anybody how to use and make or anything about it is a secret. And that's intellectual property because it's your secret. But the key to it is you have to make sure that you don't tell anybody or leave it out where somebody could see it. An IP or intellectual property portfolio, and we're talking about apps because I think that's going to be critical as we go forward and as we move forward from this day on with all of these apps and things that we're doing now. With patents, you have utility patents. And as far as an app, it's the same thing. And you get a utility patent where it's new, non-obvious, and useful. The app is the same thing. You got a patent app, a utility patent. It has to be new, non-obvious, and useful. And it improves something. And the same thing with design. Currently, you get a design patent, you just get a patent for a design or the way something looks, something ornamental, or something that's fixated. As a part of the intellectual property portfolio, with that design, it's the same thing. Instead of it being a picture on a wall or the shape of a car, it's actually in a screen with pixels. So it's actually the way that it looks on a screen. So as an app, and yes, you can get a patent for an icon. I'm sorry, not an app, but an icon. You can get a patent for the way an icon looks. It's the same thing as getting a patent for the shape of a Mustang, for a Ford Mustang. Trademarks, same thing. You get a trademark for KFC or McDonald's or what have you. Now, you can create an app with a name on it, and you can get that same protection for that app because it acts the same way. It identifies the source of a good. So that McDonald's sign that currently that's a trademark, you could have it actually a McDonald's, not a McDonald's sign, whatever the sign you create as an icon on your desktop and your graphics user interface, and you can get the same protection for that as well. All right. And copyright is the same thing, but with copyrights as a part of the intellectual property portfolio, it's the code behind it. And we're going to go into that with one of the questions that I received earlier in regards to code and software and patenting. So we're going to go into that a little later, but it's the code behind it. And an example of a copyright would be the manual. Say, for instance, you got to buy a watch, and there's a manual to that watch. The manual that you get in your hand, that's copywritten. That's what you get a copyright for. It's the same thing if you click on that manual on a screen. Say, for instance, you do something online and there's a manual to it, and you click on that manual screen. That same manual on the screen is the same. You get the same type of copyright for that manual on the screen. So that's how the app fit into it. And of course, the trade secret is just a secret. No one knows what it is until you tell people. And getting started, how do you get started? First of all, you want to plan early. You want to develop the process. And we're going to go back to some of the previous slides where you create that strategy. I think that's key. You got to create that strategy, and that is understanding the type of intellectual property that you have. That's the first thing. You need to know which type of intellectual property that you have. Patents, trademarks, trade secrets, copyright. What type of intellectual property that you have? So I think that that's important. And then you obtain help, like the innovation ventures, the PTRC, and also the resources that we have here, the USPTO. That's very important. And next thing, and you guys are going to get this next webinar as well, is you have to search to see if it already exists. So you're going to search prior art. So it's very important that you search to see if it already exists first before you put the time and effort into trying to protect that intellectual property. And last but not least, and I think this is one of the most important things, you got to carefully document and disclose your invention. You got to be careful with who you disclose your invention to, where you disclose your invention. And especially now, since out the American Invents Act, where the United States have become a first to file as opposed to a first to invent country. So it, in essence, is whoever files for it first will have the opportunity to file for that intellectual protection for that intellectual property. So keep that in mind. Let's talk patents, folks. What is a patent? A patent is the right to exclude others from using and making your invention. And there is a limited term for that, 20 years for utility patents. So you got a certain amount of time where you have a complete monopoly on your invention when you get a patent. And just like I indicated earlier, I'm gonna harken back when we talked about that global patent thing, or about it being global, that it's territorial. A patent is territorial. It means that you get a patent if you get a patent from the United States, you get that protection within the United States. There's no such thing as a worldwide patent. These are the types of patent, as I indicated earlier about deciding what type of intellectual property you have. There's a utility patent, and we're going to go into that on the previous on the next slides, not the previous slides, on the next slides. Utility patent, where it's something new, novel, non-obvious, and useful. Design patent. The definition of design patent, that is ornamental, it's fixated, a picture of something. And as I indicated earlier, think the shape of a Mustang, they got a design patent for that. And plant patents, they're becoming real popular these days. And what the plant patent is any type of plant can be patented if it was created asexually. An example of that would be if you have a seed from one flower or one plant and a different type of flowering plant, and have a seed from that one, and you slice those two seeds and put them together, and it grows into some type of flower. That's asexually reproduced. And yes, you can file for a patent for that. This is the autonomy of a patent, the way that, so if you get a patent, this is the way that it's going to look. It has the issue date up there, it has the invention title, it has your name, you see the filing date, and you see the abstract. You see this is what a patent looks like. And as you can see on that abstract, the abstract is just a summation of your invention as a whole. And hurdles to patenting. Well, there are a couple of them. The first one is that to make sure that it's new and novel and non-obvious. And what new and novel means that is not already out there. And non-obvious means that even if it was new and novel and you make a change to it, if that change it would have been obvious for people in that field, then you can't get a patent for it because it's non-obvious. So if it's obvious, it's an obvious change. So if you get a patent, say for instance, you get an invention and you tweaked it a little bit, right? And that tweak that you did to that invention that already exists, and you want to claim a new invention, if that tweak that you did was so obvious that people in the field would know that, then you can't get a patent for it. That means it's non-obvious. So that means that you have to have a non-obvious tweak in order to get a patent. And last but not least, utility. It has to be useful. It just can't be abstract. It has to have some type of usefulness to it. What is prior art? Prior art is any type of patent, publications. It could be a thesis paper, anything that existed before the invention that you're claiming that has your invention in it. So prior art is anything that existed before any type of patents or process or steps that existed before what you're creating. If it was created before that date, it's considered prior art. So that's the importance of searching before you even apply for a patent. Search to make sure it doesn't already exist. Presenting your idea. I used to get this a lot when I was out in Detroit in that office. We used to do a lot of outreach stuff there. And you would see people presenting things or presenting their invention on cardboard or what have you, without any type of protection whatsoever. And we would always tell them that before you present your idea to anybody or show it to anybody, make sure you have begun the process of protecting your invention. So you don't have to be afraid of championing your ideas. You have to be careful about the confidentiality of who you show it to. And just like with innovation ventures and PTRC and also the USPTO, you can consult with people and resources before you start presenting that idea. Because remember, we are now in a first to file area now. I mean, whoever files for it first. So you have to be careful about that idea that you have about this sharing it with everybody. Oh, and by the way, this may not be in this, I don't think this is in the slide, but if you do show it to someone or is out there in the public, you have 1 year to start the process of filing for some type of patent or protection for it. If not, you're not eligible to file for a patent for that particular idea. So just keep that in mind. So the day from which you showed you showed it to the public or to some type of any type of place that you're displaying, a yard sale, Facebook, or what have you, you have 1 year to start the process. Applying for a patent. Good. This is the path for applying for a patent. You have an idea. And as you can see, that second box, it says optional. That's the provisional application. We're going to go into that a little deeper. Got a provisional application. That provisional application doesn't turn into a patent, but it's used as a placeholder. So if you get through the provisional application, excuse me, or if you decide not to go through a provisional application, you're ready to file for a patent, you file for a non-provisional patent, which is the next block, which turns into a patent. All right. Now, you may, I'm quite sure everybody's, well, what's the difference between provisional and non-provisional application? Well, let's start off with non-provisional first. Remember that non-provisional application can become a patent. But look what the requirements are. With the non-provisional application, it's examined by an examiner. Your invention is published 18 months from the earliest filing date, unless you request it not to be published, and it can become a patent. On the other hand, provisional application. First of all, they're not examined or published. So your invention that you're disclosing is not examined, nor is it published. But it gives you a year to go through and make all and get everything together to decide if you really want to put the money and time in filing for a non-provisional application. It gives you a year to put it on Facebook. It gives you a year to consult manufacturing companies, to talk to people, to try to get partners, to get investors, what have you. You get a whole year to make that decision on whether or not you want to go forward. Now, one of the stipulation is it's only for utility patents, and that's the majority of patents. So it's only for utility patents. And as it indicated with this last bullet, is a low-cost way of establishing a filing date. And that is important because remember, this country, we are a first to file country now. So whoever gets there first. So that's important to have a low-cost way to establish an early effective filing date. Non-provisional application, as I indicated earlier, there are just a lot of requirements. And from my experience, and just based on my experience alone, when you're doing a non-provisional patent application, it's good to have legal help when you're going to do that, because there are really a lot of requirements, a lot of laws that you must follow in order for it to meet patent eligibility. So you have to have the spec. You have to have the description of the claim. You have to have the inventor information. And also, and what you don't have to have with the provisional application, with the non-provisional application, you have to have the prescribed filing, searching, and examining fees as well. So that's included with the non-provisional patent application. And as you can see, that's when you really should get some help with people who have that type of intellectual property background. What do I need to disclose? Well, since we are a quid pro quo system, or a patent is a quid pro quo system, which means that I give you something, you give me something. And what patents is what we give you or what the government gives you, or what the patent office gives you, is the right to exclude others from using and making your invention for a limited time. So you have a monopoly on that. That's what you're getting. We're gonna give you a patent, we'll give you protection. Well, what is the United States getting? And what is the patent office getting? Well, they're getting the fact that they're going to get your invention on how to use and make your invention, your innovation. So we can put it out there so everyone can see it and look at it and improve on it. And why would why would you want to do that? First of all, as a country, that keeps us ahead of the technological curve because we're constantly innovating and constantly inventing. And without people giving their ideas out there, it's kind of hard to improve on certain things. So the more ideas and innovation that we put out there and have people build on it, that's where we create things that make things better, faster, more efficient, better medicine, etc. So that's the quid pro quo system. We give you the right for 20 years or so for a limited monopoly, and you give us your inventions, your thought, how to use it and make that invention. What do I need to disclose? Well, you need to disclose everything about the invention, but most importantly, you need to make sure that your claims are clear, that your claims have those boundaries that I talked about when we talked about intellectual property of the invention. So you can only claim your invention or that inventive concept that you have. So that's what needs to be disclosed. And this is an example of the patent application roadmap, the back and forth. And again, I've been at it for 20-some years, and this is the way it goes. You file an application, or the innovation ventures or whoever you are work with file an application. It goes to an examiner. The examiner look at your application, he examine your application, and he searched your application to see if that invention actually is new, novel, and non-obvious. And the examiner could say, well, you know what? This is an excellent application, looks good, is new, non-obvious, and it's useful. We're going to go, it can need to go to it. We can allow it. That's one route. The next route is the examiner say, well, you know what? You don't have anything here. We have it. We have the prior art for it. So the examiner rejects it. All right. Now, it's not over yet. The examiner or the patent office sends it back to the applicant with the rejection. And as you see on this other highway here, the examiner, the applicant, you get that case back with the rejection. You can either amend to try to make it right, or try to add to it, or explain to say, well, you know what, examiner, I think it's still an invention. You had it wrong. This is the way that it should be. And it goes back to the examiner again after you do the amendments or changes, what have you. The examiner could say, well, you did everything we asked you to do. I'm convinced you were right. It goes to allowance. However, if the examiner say no, say it's still wrong, the prior art still teaches it, don't want to do it, we can't have it. So you, the applicant, you can say, well, what else do I have? Well, you can appeal it. You can appeal the case and say, well, I want someone else to take a look at it, and go to the appeals board for them to take a look at it and make the decision. Or if you don't do anything, the case will go abandoned. So that's the application roadmap, and that's the back and forth that that we have between the applicant and the examiners. And the role of an examiner, and one of the things, and the most difficult part for us, especially with these new cases, and especially with the software cases and the AI cases and things like that, is we have to read and understand the application. We have to search to make sure that invention does not already exist. And we have to evaluate the specification and claims in order to make sure that you have the specification, right? You have the claims. We have to make sure that they support each other. So when we're evaluating those two, we have to make sure that there is some synchronization between the two. And then we have to respond by office actions to what our findings are. And one of the things that I find helpful, and I encourage everyone to do this, I mean, especially when you file it, is to request those interviews with the examiner. So you can have that conversation, that dialogue about the invention, or about what someone is thinking. Because, you know, written correspondence is good, don't get me wrong. But when you have that face-to-face, or that you can talk to that person on the phone and have a active dialogue, you can explain your side a lot better and they can explain their side a lot better. The role of an applicant, we want to make sure that if you're an applicant, please file a complete application. We want you to disclose all the known prior art. So it's incumbent on you to disclose the art that you know that exists, the prior art that you know that exists. And also, in response to the examiner's office action, again, when you respond back to it, explain your position and just make good faith changes to the application to try to move the application forward. That's the role of an applicant. And is your idea eligible for protection? It is if it's a process, a machine, a manufacturer, or a composition of matter. What is patentable? As you can see on the left side, you got products. So what's patentable is physical things, manufacture, composition of matter, and it has to be novel, non-obvious, and useful, or as you can see, utility. On the right side of that, it has is a process. What is patentable? Processes are. Is a means to an end, means of doing something new, and new way of doing something old. What is not patentable? And this is where it gets kind of tricky. First of all, you can't patent an idea, just an idea. It must be new, non-obvious, useful. It could be a machine, a manufacturer, a process, or composition of matter that can actually accomplish that task. What can't be patentable is a natural phenomenon. It could be or some type of abstract idea. That you can't patent just an abstract idea without any structure whatsoever. And this is an example of the software and computer architecture. And by the way, folks, this area here has changed. I've been in this area for many years. As a matter of fact, I am an adjunct professor and I teach computer architecture. It has it's really changed. A lot of advances in these areas with artificial intelligence, computer error control, etc. But this is an example of software areas that you can get patents in, where you can patent software ideas, from memory access and control to database and file management, and including AI and simulation. And this is an example of a software claim. And this is going to go right into one of the questions that we receive in regards to, should we put code in the claim, or what's entailed in the claim, or what has to be in a claim to get a software patent. This is an example of a software claim. Now, there's no code in there, but is incumbent on you to put in there how to use and make your invention. And if you look at this particular claim, it just describes how the invention works, how the folders are synchronized in a way that it's describing the software elements and the processes. That's what's needed in order to get a software patent or for a good software claim. And going back to what we talked about, getting a design patent for certain things, and this is an example of a design patent of an actual icon or something on the screen of a GUI. So as you can see, that's the patent number up there. But as you can see, the claim says the ornamental design for a graphic user interface for a display screen as shown above. This is just proof that you can get a patent for something on a graphics user interface. That's what GUI stands for, a graphics user interface screen, the way something looks on the screen. So this is an example of a design patent claim. All right. And for people who want to know more information, especially about the questions that was given earlier in regards to one-on-one, please feel free to go to these links because they have about subject matter eligibility. And folks, it's constantly changes. So there's some nuances in the way that they're giving you information on that. But these are the latest guidelines on how to decide whether or not something is subject matter eligible to be a patent. And this is another part of if you go to uspto.gov of this site where you have examples, and that's the best way to learn. I think the best way to learn is to go through and look at some of the examples, of subject matter eligibility of especially software claims and even claims with that's claiming apps. And the best practices, going back to if you're gonna describe something or your invention, make sure you spend time on the background, how you came up with the invention, the challenges that you had before you created this invention. That's very important. And again, claim your invention very carefully. Again, keep it within those boundaries, keep it within those boundaries and that idea that you have in that inventive concept. And also articulate how your invention improves the computer functionality. All right. And now, and this is a couple of slides from the different type of USPTO resources, and I'm quite sure Innovation Ventures and the PTRC there, they have this information as well, where you can go to it. The USPTO Gov site is very comprehensive, and these are the different areas where we have the different patent offices is now located. And Elizabeth Doherty is the regional outreach director. Folks, she is fantastic. She's running this department awesomely. I mean, she's doing a great job of getting people out there. And I would like to thank her personally for giving me the opportunity to present today to you all. Now, we have some questions, and I guess we're going to go back to, could we put the questions on the, in the chat area?
Yes, can you see it? It's already in the chat.
It's already in the chat? Okay, let me see. Okay, I don't see the chat, but I have my questions up here. So, but is it in the chat now?
Yeah.
Okay, and can I start now?
Yeah, would you please?
Okay, awesome. The first question was, do you have to submit code with a software patent? No, you don't have to submit code with a software patent. Now, years ago, a long time ago, that used to be true where code, we did put code in there, but now that it's so complex, you don't need to submit code in there. As a matter of fact, a lot of people copyright their code. But as long as you have a way, and normally they use algorithms, a way of showing how new and novel and non-obvious your invention is and how that invention works. Even if it's software on the processes and steps and how that process works, you can get a patent for that. You can apply for a patent for that because it protects the functionality of the different steps. Okay. All right, hold on one second now. All right, and the next one is, do you actually need a patent for software since it's easier to just obtain a software copyright? Well, first of all, it depends on what you're trying to do. It depends on whatever it is, whatever your invention is. If your invention has to do with functionality, then you don't need to do that. But if your invention is a software, then you need to file for a patent if it's a functionality. But if your software is just code and it's just a manual or something like that, you don't have to do that. And it depends on, and sometimes it can serve two functions, by the way. And you can have both copyright and you can get a software patent on it, or you can claim it. But that's something that you gotta have to consult with your legal people in intellectual property or attorneys and things like that, or either Innovation Ventures probably can help you out with that. But you need to decide what do you want your patent for? What are you going to use it for? Because sometimes it could be you can just do copyright, and sometimes you can just do a patent. So it depends on what you're going to use it for, or what do you want to do with that invention. All right. The next question is, and feel free to interject if you want to need further explanation. The next question was, what can a patent protect for software developers? First of all, with software developers, it does just like anybody else. It protects the functionality, your idea, and the function of your functions of your ideas. It protects whatever you invented. So even though you're software developers, whatever you create and develop, whatever those processes are, ending in a result, if it's new, non-obvious, and actually has a result to it, you can get a patent for it. So yes, and again, it goes back to what are you going to use it for to get a patent? But yes, you can get a patent for it, and that's what that's the kind of protection you can get for software developers. The next question is, How can developers define their software applications? So first of all, it goes back, and it's simple when you think about that. Anytime you talk about software development or software applications, you just describe how to use and make their inventions. So if you can describe that and how to use and make their invention, and that invention is new, novel, and non-obvious, it's fine. And it's no difference from just a standard getting an invention for any type of utility patent. It's how do you describe how to use and make it. So one of ordinary skill in the art could take what you've written down, can look at it and reproduce it, and it functions the way that it's supposed to function. So that's how you define it. And then again, always keep in mind that you can write it down, but it still have to fit within the legal realm of the legalese language when you're writing it in. So when you're talking about how developers can define their software application, just define it with the regular language, with regular everyday English language. But if you want to try to get a patent for it, just make sure that you convert that language into legalese language. And therein lies where the attorneys and patent practitioners come into play with putting it in that form. But to get an invention, you just have to describe how to use and make it, and make sure that invention is new, novel, and non-obvious. All right. Any special question I should be asking myself to help me determine if my software invention is patentable? The same question you should ask yourself if it's not a software patent. Is it new, non-obvious, and novel? Those are the questions that you want to ask yourself. Anything other than that, it depends on it becomes it's complex, and so it is if you asking yourself a question about whether or not your system that you should file for software application, or you create something in software, just keep in mind, if you can describe the functionality of it, it has a result, and it's new and novel, absolutely apply for it. You can apply for it. All right. Any specific do's, don'ts, criteria to consider for patenting? Well, first of all, the don'ts is don't start it if you haven't done a search to see if it already exists. That's number one. Number two, don't tell anybody what your invention is. You keep that invention to yourself. Again, I'm harkening back to we are first to file country now, or first to file patent system now. So keep that to yourself, and just make sure that it's new, novel, and non-obvious. So the do's and don'ts is, don't tell everybody. The do's is make sure that it's new, novel, and non-obvious, and then you're good to go. All right, that's what you think of when you're considering getting a patent. And last but not least, I want to make sure I make that clear, is make sure you search, is make sure that it doesn't already exist. You search the prior art to make sure that it doesn't already exist. All right, question 4. If I made my software available open source license, can I file for a patent? Absolutely, you can file for a patent. Remember now, once you disclose it, you have up to a year. Now, here's where it's tricky. If you have something that's open source, that means that everybody can use it, or you want people to build off of it. That when you file for a patent for open source, and you want protection for that, then that's when you need to get legal help on. If you want to file for it and ask for it to be open source, but yet you want to make sure that you have business licenses, that people file for business licenses and things like that, then you have to file with that in mind, because if you're filing for a patent, they're going to give you protection of that invention. But once you make it open source, therein lies where you have to have legal representation to see what your limits are, because you're making it open source. But yet you want to file for protection that gives you a limited monopoly for 20 years. So there lies where innovation ventures and PTRC and some of the pro bono programs, they come into play, because you need to know specifically why you're making it open source and why you're asking for protection for that particular open source, the open source language that you're using, or the open source code, or what have you. So to answer your question, yes is the answer. If you made the open source via open license, can you file? The answer is yes. But the rest of the answer is what are you going to use it for and how you going to protect it? And therein lies where you need to get the practitioners or the IP practitioners involved. All right. And by the way, yes, that has happened. There's many instances out there where that has happened. All right. Number 5, if my product is already available, can I file for a patent? Well, if your product was available over a year and it was disclosed over a year, you can't get a patent on that particular one. And that's why it's important when you have that idea, you know, the sense of urgency should be there. Once you disclose that idea, you have a year to file something, whether it's just a provisional application to give you a placeholder to decide whether or not you want to go further. But you have to file within a year. So even though you're selling the product, if you're selling it more than a year, you can't get a patent for that product because it has to be within a year. Number 6, once I file for a software patent, can I make the code available via open source? Absolutely. That's on you. Again, you can do that, but it goes back between you and the patent attorney that you're working with on how you want to structure that, because then you got business licensing fees and things like that that you deal with, which makes it, you know, makes it kind of hard. So therein lies where you need the legal help when it comes to, you know, your specific purpose for wanting to do that. And therein where you need to get legal help. But yes, you can do that, but you definitely need legal representation. Okay. When does integrate into a practical application? Sorry, folks. Number 7. What does, and they're quoting here, integrate into a practical application, unquote, mean in the USPTO guidance 2019 guidance? What integrate into a practical application, in essence, it just means that it's useful, novel, and has a tangible result. That is just not some type of abstract idea. There's some type of application for it. Whether you're improving on a process, whether you're improving on some type of efficiency or something, as long as you have a result for that, along with the inventive concept. So that's the gist of it. Again, we listed the resources earlier, and you're going to have the slides. You can get more detail in there, but if you want to know just the understanding of integrate into a practical application, just think of the fact that it's useful, non-obvious, useful, novel, and has some type of tangible result, just not some type of abstract idea. All right. Can you give some examples of what would not fit within the criteria? Well, we talked about it earlier. Well, perpetual motion would be one, because you can't define perpetual motion, and it's like an abstract idea. So perpetual motion, and also transitory signals will be one as well. You know, where you just have transitory signals with just signals out there. You can't claim just a signal. So that would be another example of it. All right, question 8. How does the USPTO look at inventions using AI? Well, right now, AI is kind of new. So, but we look at AI the same way we look at any other applications now. But one of the things that's interesting with AI, and I want to make this clear because I think people get confused about this. AI, which is artificial intelligence, you can file for a patent for AI, which is artificial intelligence. But what the question is, that AI, or artificial intelligence, you can create it with algorithms and things of that nature, that would allow you to get a result. However, if that artificial intelligence come up on its own with some type of result, that's the $100,000 question on whether or not they could be, or whether or not they could be a patent, whether or not the AI itself could be a patent owner. So with artificial intelligence, that's the way that patent examiners look at artificial intelligence, the same way we look at any other software patent application that come through us, whether it's new, novel, and non-obvious. But that question about whether or not the artificial intelligence itself can create new and novel stuff, that's a question that's before the office right now. And I think that's where this question was going, was on that particular one. But other than that, AI is treated like any other software application or any other application in the office. And it goes back to, is there a difference between AI and software related invention? There is no difference between the two, other than the fact that, again, if this artificial intelligence somehow figure out by itself without human input that they can do certain things, then that's before the office right now. That's the biggest question before the office. All right. Are there any questions on that? Did I miss a question?
Great, he answered the most questions. Alex, if you have a more further question or you want to expand more, you can probably, it's time to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great
if anybody
questions,
has any
by the way.
follow-on questions. Sorry, go ahead. Does anybody have any follow-on questions to the questions we posted?
Can I ask one question, which is related to whatever question here? You mentioned all this about the software application. My understanding is that apps is a part of the software, probably application, and like machine learning and AR, all part of it. My question is that does all this field has their own classifications when you're talking about? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, they don't necessarily have their own classifications, but they may fit within a subclass. Some of them do have new classifications, but some of them fit within a class in software where there's a subclass that include what the functionality is. So depending on what the functionality of the AI, because artificial intelligence is the same thing as software. Other than that, artificial intelligence is the fact that they adapt and it changes, you know what I mean? As far as information that comes in, you actually have some type of intelligence with it, as opposed to just having a script or something read. So the way that we classify and the way that things are classified, it may be a separate classification for it, but depending on which particular type of artificial intelligence you have, there could be a subclass of something that already exists within the software area.
Good. Go ahead.
Now, and I say this stuff is not only new to us, but it's been around for a while, but it is evolving so fast. Because think about it, yeah, no one thought that a artificial or algorithm itself can just go off on its own and create something, you know, and that's the power of artificial intelligence, and that's what is before the office right now, and that's critical, you know, and because we're doing everything via everything is electronic, we're doing everything via the computer. But no one anticipated this part of artificial intelligence, that it would take off on its own and start creating its own mind, creating its own creativity. That's the scary part, but that's the part that we all are dealing with right now.
Great, thank you.
But also one of the things that and this is for people who are some of the things that I've seen over the years, is that 1 year thing. I've been doing this for a lot of years and did a lot of presentations and especially part of the Midwest. Most people don't realize that when you have that idea out there, going past that year, that is real. Once you put it out there, or you show it at a teacher's conference, you can show it anywhere. You could have it at a yard sale. Once you disclose what it is, you have a year to get that invention, to try to apply for that invention. And one of the beautiful things that I think everybody should realize, and I know that innovation ventures, you know, they know that provisional application is an awesome placeholder. I mean, you're talking about getting your ideas at a way that you can at least have some type of security, not a lot, but a little security to say that, hey, that's my invention. You know, I know I don't have the money to do it right now, but I can at least start by having it put it down and have it in that safe box, which is the patent office.
Alfred, there's a question in the chat. Can you look at?
Okay, let me open up the chat. Okay.
The last one.
Okay, I'm trying to, let me see. Oh, I didn't have the chat open, okay. Okay, they say, if somebody filed a patent application using the same method, different fields, will that patent be granted? if it's the same method, they can't be, because you can only have one patent. So even if it's in a different field, it's that process. And that's why I say the boundaries of the intellectual property is within the claims. So if they have a series of steps that comes with the result, or whatever that is, that's what you get, that's what that person gets a monopoly of. And I can tell you an example of what some people do. Some companies, they'll file for a method, and later on they'll file for apparatus of the same thing or something similar of that same method. So you can have a method claim, an apparatus claim, and a system claim. I've seen it that direction, but not for somebody separate from that inventor trying to file that same thing in a different area. Based on my experience, I haven't seen that. And I think there was another.
That's where doing the prior art search to understand what the space looks like is important before filing a patent application. And yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to say one quick thing. I mean, with the technology that we have today with Google Scholar and places that, like Innovation Ventures and the PTRCs, there's no reason why people cannot start the process if you have that burning idea to get it out there. It's no reason, because they have a wealth of services. And even if you decide to do it from your home, you can go to Google Patents or Google Scholar just to start to see if it already exists before you even go to Innovation Ventures or the PTRC. You can start that yourself just to see what's already out there. And I think that is such a valuable tool that wasn't there for a lot of people years ago. When I started at the patent office, we didn't have this sort of thing. People had to go and pay a lot of money to go and get search firms and stuff like that. Now we have it at our fingertips. And I encourage everyone who has that idea or that invention or that burning desire to create something to take advantage of that. And guess what? It's free. You cannot beat free, you know, for something that this country actually needs. I mean, I don't know if people realize it or not, that other countries are filing patents like you wouldn't believe at a level that's huge. So I think that for us, you know, especially this country, I think that we need to push that more. And that's why I love doing this. That's why I love bringing the good news. Okay, here's other than Google patents, there are other sources that the USPTO use? Absolutely. The question was, other than Google patents, is there other sources that the USPTO use? Absolutely. We use Google itself. We use all kind of non-patent literature. We use IBM's patents, dialogue patents, anything that's non-patent literature. If we can find a thesis paper that you did 10 years ago, we find that because we search everywhere. So to answer your question, we search non-patent literature as well. All right. The other question, say again?
I just say that not just a patent, also including literature from databases, right? From all kind of data. So that's why important. It's not just only do the patent search, also need to looking into non-patent literature. Absolutely.
And just to give you guys, before I answer this question, to give you guys with Google and some of the other ones, Google is an example of intellectual property at its best. Google could have gotten a patent on their algorithm. They decided to keep it a trade secret. And that's why they are popular, and they're still benefiting off it to this day. Other than that, 20 years ago, they would have had a 20-year monopoly. You know, so that's just another fact. Okay, so if device has a similar structure, material, similar fabrication process, generally not the specifics of fabrication different, but the application is different and unique from other patents, can a provisional patent be granted? First of all, it would never be a provisional patent, is a provisional application. So keep that in mind, because remember that provisional application is just a placeholder, because you can't get a patent from a provisional, you get a patent for a non-provisional. But yes, you can. The question, to answer your question, yes, they're saying if you have a similar structure, material, similar fabrication process, but the application is different and unique. Absolutely, because remember, the only thing it has to be is new, novel, and non-obvious. All inventions are built on other things that already exist. So just remember, as long as it's new, novel, and non-obvious, absolutely you can file for a patent. All right, the other one says, And remember, it's not a provisional patent, it's a provisional application. Next one is HH. The USPTO has software that aids in the search. I knew that was coming. PTRCs can assist you in using the public version of this software. Okay. Who HJ said that? Okay, so this automated search thing that we're coming up. As a matter of fact, this is brand new to all of us too. We actually getting trained on it as well. All right. I've heard that literature under paywall doesn't count in prior art search. Is this statement true? I've never heard of paywall. I've heard that literature under paywall, but anything that has a date to it that can be validated, that was the date that it was there, you can use as prior art. Anything that has a date on it that we can verify that date, and that's considered prior art. It could be a note you wrote to your mother somewhere. It's prior art. All right. It says, I have heard that literature under paywall doesn't count in prior. Okay. Actually, I'm not sure about that. Maybe I can get somebody else that's familiar with paywall. I'm not familiar with paywall.
Yeah, just to chime in that
somebody put in USPTO.gov. Okay, good. All right.
Alford, just to elaborate on that, there's a lot of non-patent literature that's only available with a purchase or paid subscription. A lot of journal articles. So I think that's what the question is directed to. Do those articles that you have to pay for or have a subscription for to the website, do they count as prior art?
Absolutely. Absolutely. As long as the date can be validated, it's prior art. Now, one of the things that I don't know if that was an issue at first is Wikipedia. At one point, there was an issue about that. But other than that, anything that has a date to it, that you can prove that date, that's prior art. I don't know of any other exclusions of whether it's paid services or not. Anything that existed before and you can prove that it was existed on that date is prior art. And as patent examiners, that's what we do. Every source that we can get it from. All right, it says, if we have to pay $50 to read the research paper, is that considered prior art? If we have to pay $50 to read the research, is that? I'm confused by that question. If we have to pay $50 to read the research paper, is that considered? Well, if it has a date on it, if you pay $50 or $100 or $1,000, if the date is that considered $50 to read the research paper, is that considered prior art? Well, maybe that question is out of my league.
I think basically if it's in the public domain and it's accessible, no matter how much you have to pay, it's in the public domain.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Okay. Got it. Okay.
And
we will have a session. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, just as Mei-Lin mentioned that this kind of question just before on December 13th, we have a last session about a patent search. I think all these questions relate to patent literature and the non-patent literature can be asked at that session as well.
Okay. All right. And also, they're reminded that there's going to be a how to conduct a prior art search is coming on December 13th, folks. So that question will be answered there as well. So thank you, Tatiana. Okay.
Thank you, Alfred.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
It looks like that's recommendation whether or not to file an apparatus versus method claim. I think that is probably something that we can either take offline. Feel free to reach out to us, or if you have a patent attorney, then they would probably be best suited to advise on that.
Okay, recommendation.
Yeah.
Right, as long as the invention is the same. Okay, all right. No, thank you guys for having me.
Any last minute questions? No, we're good. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you for joining us, Alfred, and the USPTO team. Thank you very much. Our partners at Brunswick Libraries, thank you very much, and Innovation Ventures team, thank you for joining.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and stay safe out there.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.